Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is an amazing panel that we have here. I must say, we were very amazed at the speech given by Moss Alvin Tan. And, we practically say maybe he's already spoken for all of us, but no fear. The ladies on this panel have plenty to add on. And this is an amazing panel because Moss Tan is flanked by 4 women. Please take a photo because you're not going to see this very often, but we're going to make it a practice. So the theme here is ESG, passé post-COVID? And I think you would practically know that it will not be the answer. We believe very strongly that so many things are happening post-COVID that drives us to a better and stronger conviction that it matters and that it's everyone's business, as Moss Tan had shown us earlier. So to get the conversation going, please be reminded that we really appreciate questions from the audience. So please start keying in your questions. But I really would like to start with Ambassador Vono. And Ambassador, thank you so much for being here. We have actually been watching the Netherlands and very impressed with many of the things taking place in the area of ESG. So perhaps to get us going on the conversation, could you kind of let us know what are some of the advanced thinking on ESG principles from your country? And what are some of the developments that the Dutch companies are doing over in Singapore that we should all be very excited about?
Thank you, and it's really a pleasure to be here. I'm glad it's not an all-female panel. When it's all-female, I ask, are there no competent males? There are. If there's an all-male panel, I ask the same, are there no competent females? But I think this is ESG, what it's about. It's diversity and it's working together. And I think that's what both in the Netherlands and in Singapore is happening nowadays, that you can't do it on your own, not from the government, not from business, not from individuals. In the Netherlands, we have a climate agreement between business, government, and a lot of NGOs. And I think what is interesting is that we have a lot of investors from our pension funds who also signed the climate agreement. And they say that they're going to invest sustainability. Sustainable social reasons are part of the equation, and they invest in Singapore as well. I've just learned that DBS is on top of their list because and Shell as well, because they're looking also about transition. They say you can't have 100% fault and 100% a perfect world, so we have to be flexible, and that's what we're doing in the Netherlands. We're proud that we're a member of the European Union region that wants to be climate neutral by 2050, and we are trying our best with that as well. And I think what is important for the Netherlands is that we are a polar country. 25% of our country is below sea level, and we only manage that by working together. So we want a buy-in from all stakeholders. That's why it's sometimes so messy in the Dutch and it takes a long time, but we get results and then we go for it together. And what I'm very proud of is that the first ever polder outside of the Netherlands in Southeast Asia is being built here in Singapore. And that a lot of Singaporean and Dutch engineers are working together to create that same feeling. And I also commend Singapore for being the green finance hub in Asia. And I see that there's a lot of interest from the Netherlands and the European side to invest and work together. And lastly, for my personal, I have a hybrid car. So I try to travel electric when I can, because it's possible in Singapore. I drink the PUB water. I bring my own bag when I go shopping. And I see that a lot of people in Singapore are doing this as well. And I'm inspired Singapore Youth for Climate Action and other organizations who are so vocal here.
Very nice, Ambassador Vono. Now I know why you're the champion and why you're sent here. And that's a very, very important theme. You were mentioning that, the ecosystem is very critical. And it's not just the government's role, and we are not looking at Alvin on that, right? But the business role is actually a very important part. Therefore, I'm going to you, Kabing, and she's chairman of Shell companies in Singapore. So, for Shell, this is a very important base in Singapore. Can you kind of share with us how the evolution all right, of the business has been taking place with ESG principles driving the change.
Well, thank you very much, Annie, and be on this panel. Well, Shell has a very proud history in Netherlands and also in Singapore. So in Singapore, we've been in this country for 129 years. I think, for many of us, me included, I can't imagine what it was like 129 years ago, but we were here. And so you asked a question which does deserve a very long answer, but I'll try and cut it short. Yeah?
We'll give you 5 minutes.
So I think for Shell, as we think about sustainability and how we make it a core part of how we do business, we look at, three levels. Yeah. So one is really the foundation of how we run our business today. Whether we run it safely, we run it in a resilient way, in a profitable way, and doing that every single day is part of how we keep our business going. But having said that, we look back, and we look at how we impact the communities and society around us. So Shell has always believed that we are part of a bigger community, and we therefore have to play our part. So, for example, in this country, we've worked with communities around us, whether it's, the Lakeside Family Services, Science Center, the traffic police. We've done things with them for decades. Yeah. And that matters to us because we want to make a positive contribution to the society around us. And then the third part is always about the future, how we see that future and how are we going to be ready for a future that's not the same as what it looks like today. So, last week I talked extensively with quite a lot of people about how Shell in Singapore will pivot towards that future where, we want to transform at the very core what we do to make products that are more resilient in the energy transition, to look at more renewable value chains, more circular value chains, to skill up our people and ready for that change, to use technology, how we will then work on sectorial transformation for the sectors that matter, not just to Shell, but to Singapore as well. So the sectors like aviation, shipping, trading, you talk a bit about that, mobility, sectors that are important to both Shell and Singapore, and obviously how we partner in making that future come to life. So for us, I think doing what we do today in a robust way, caring for the community, and then, being clear about how we will address the future is how we think about sustainability.
Very nice. All right. 129 years all in 3 minutes. All right.
I cried.
But, and that's great because when Ambassador Bono started, she was thinking of the environment, so the E part. And I think your conversation, what you've shared is the S part, getting the society, getting the community. So I'm sorry, Eldon, I have to make you wait because all the women have to speak first. I'm going to get to Sushan for the governance part. All right, for the G part of the business. So I know DBS, all right, is very dear to all of us, and you have implemented quite a number of ESG initiatives, especially on green financing, but it's beyond that, I think. So how do you create this kind of awareness amongst your customers and your high clients? How do you drive this message for companies big and small?
Annie, I like to think that doing good now is equivalent to doing business. I think shareholders, investors, customers, stakeholders are going to be intolerant of pure profit motivated businesses that don't care about externalities. And these externalities can be anything from governance, child labor, animal husbandry, to pollution, to lack of positive impact, right? And so this intolerance is manifesting itself in really the pure outperformance of returns. Shareholder returns, as Minister, you rightly pointed out, have outperformed in both up and down markets. I know because I personally invested in an outperformance index of ESG compliant companies versus the market. And even in a down market during COVID, the ESG bucket way outperformed. And so I think people are putting their money where their mouth is. And whether it's E or S or G, there are now measurements. I think the jury is open as to how do you have a cohesive measurement. I think that's going to be tough. But at least the recognition that stakeholders are going to be intolerant of bad behavior, non-compliant behavior. The notion that customers will not support businesses who are not ESG compliant means that in order to be sustainable, you have to adopt these principles. And I think we're moving there in a very quick way in the post-COVID situation. Thank you to the Dutch pension fund for their support to DBS. Our ESG governance framework is centered around 3 pillars, which is responsible businesses, responsible banking, and social impact, right? So, and I think that spoke to all of what we collectively said in the last few minutes. And so, doing good is doing business.
Very good. Having heard from all 3 ladies, Selwyn, come back to you. Okay, I love the fact that they've actually put you in charge of Ministry of Trade and Industry and Ministry of Community Youth. So both the young, the future generation, and the businesses and trade. So maybe from your eyes, you have been a very new minister the last couple of months. From your eyes, what were some of the very immediate things that you think you really need to drive and change? Both at the trade and industry level first, and then at the youth and the community level next.
Right. Well, Prof, that's a big undertaking. And Ambassador Bono and I had just that you're right smack in the middle of a existential but also unprecedented crisis. So many things you question assumptions on both the economic side and trade, then also about what our youth are thinking. We talked about millennial investors in the speech earlier on, but then how community are shaping different norms, because COVID-19 has brought about a reset, as it were. If you think about the panel here, just on the panel here, we have a representative from the academia, from business, right? And then from our international partners, and we're doing a lot with the Dutch, including mutual recognition of urban farming and exchanging talent across both of our countries. And then, of course, for Sushan, on the green financing side. And then behind the scenes, we have X, which is a non-profit. And I think bringing together these diversity of views is the only way, because there is the old rule book or playbook has been really thrown out of the window. And every day, when we are looking at investments on the MTI side, for example, or how do you open up our borders, these things, you don't look back and you say, this is how we used to do it, because there is no way, indeed, right? There's no 10-year series, as we always think about in Singapore terms. But you are crafting it as we go, and you need that diversity of views to chart this new course.
Very nice. Minister must have designed this panel, all right, as well. All right, I'm quite sure that Seng T and the EXCO has worked, Minister, to get these names here. We have a great question that has just come in, and I don't know who wants to answer this, but please put up your hand if you are going to. Does the prevalence of ESG considerations mean that opportunistic investment for short-term gains will no longer be a factor in investment decisions? I think, Minister, you take it first at the country level, and Sushan at the corporate level.
Yeah, I think there's some inevitability because I think, as Sushan had mentioned, even if you look at financial instruments and the performances, that has already given you a signal. The second is from a youth perspective and the MCCY perspective. When we speak to youth, they're already saying that, oh, I'm very, very keen on sustainable practices. I'm looking at purchasing my consumer purchasing from companies that have a sustainable bent to it. And then the third thing is now we are also investing in specific growth areas. So these things in many regard could be complementary. In fact, they are already complementary. So it's almost inevitable that ESG has to be a consideration in this new, or rather in this next normal.
Very good. So why must it be either gains or sustainable, right? Why can't it be both? And actually, Sushan, you kind of mentioned that your ESG portfolio outperformed. Yeah. But at the company level, is someone asking you for facilities for short-term gains versus long-term, or is it both compatible?
Well, I like to call this the 3 T's of financing. I think the shades of green.
Yeah, okay.
There is light green, medium green, and dark green. And if you're in the brown industry today, to expect a brown industry person to move immediately to dark green is going to be quite difficult.
Yeah.
And different economies are moving at different speeds and evolving at different speeds as their GDP grows or falls, for that matter. And so I think when I call it the 3 T's are, number one is transactions. You've got to be clear about your transactions and what color they are. And then you have to be open to being transparent. That's my second T. And then the third T is transition. Then you can start transitioning. And when you transition, you don't have, therefore, if you know that you're going to transition, then you reduce the risk of becoming a stranded asset. So, if you're just going to go there for short-term gains to the question, then you risk becoming ultimately a stranded asset that A, nobody wants to invest in, or B, no banks want to help you finance. And C, frankly, the cost is going to be very high as well. So not doing good doesn't make good business sense in the long term. And so it's not sustainable. So I think if companies are thinking of that transition, just be open to being transparent, look at your transactions, and then work with a bank to go through that journey. It will evolve, and it will mean stakeholders, shareholders, customers, employees have to work together. And it is an ecosystem, as ambassadors say. But we will get that together.
Very nice. And that's where I want to pivot to cupping, because, Shell is a big name, and you will probably have a lot of other smaller players up the value chain. How do you encourage the change and the transition for many of the suppliers or the raw material producers that's feeding to Shell downstream? And how do you encourage your consumers to have that change as well?
So when I was listening to Sushan, I was like, wow, that's exactly how we're thinking about it.
The 3 shades of green.
So, you can call it shades of green. And for us, we say, what is our long-term ambition? What is going to drive us to change? We talk about getting to net zero by 2050. We talk about moving in step with society, as well as helping our customers decarbonize. And, these are fine if you think about it as, okay, so long term, that's where you want to get to. And you have to be quite clear and quite explicit about that. So we started making that explicit, I think, back in 2017. We started talking about our net zero journey, being the North Star that we look to. But then there's a whole, series of things that you have to do, and a whole lot of people that you have to work with, whether they are customers, vendors. It doesn't matter what the size is, honestly. And I think, firstly, I completely agree with Sushan. Transparency of where we want to get to, how we're thinking about it, what we ourselves are achieving, all that needs to come to the fore. So as an example, we're in the energy business, right? So we have our emissions. Our customers, when they use our products, also generate emissions. So for us, we want to look at all of these emissions, not just what we generate, but what our customers will generate when they use our products. So we look at all of that as part of our responsibility. And when we say we want to make it transparent, we start publishing it. It doesn't matter that, the whole world has not come to terms with one single way of disclosure, but we have to start with what we know and put it out there, work with other people, so we work with indices like Carbon Disclosure Project to actually get that out there as well. So I think, this whole thing about being transparent of where you want to get to and start to talk about how you want to get there, totally resonates.
Very nice. You know, Ambassador Bono, I was so impressed. You say you drive an electric car in Singapore.
Yeah.
And how many years have you been here in Singapore?
I've been here 3 years, and it took me 1.5 years to get the funding and the possibility of driving an electric car. So you also need stamina. And I think I'd like to add, because both Singapore and the Netherlands are relatively small places on Earth, that we really need to collaborate with so many other countries and the international community. And I think that's also our strength, because we act really on our beliefs, and then together we, in the United Nations, with the climate international negotiations, can work together. And I think that's what I like. Singapore and the Netherlands being 10,000 kilometers apart, but very often being very effective for the good of the global world.
Very nice. So, you know, every time I go to Rotterdam, I get very impressed because everybody knows how to take care of the recycling. How do you get the young to start early?
I think because it's considered to be cool to have the recycled stuff. So I remember that recycling was for old people who didn't have enough money, and now it is, you pay extra for the recycled clothes, for example. And I think that's the way forward, that it should be good business.
So having stayed here for 3 years, Ambassador, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that you think we could do?
Well, some you've ripped already, like bring your own bag to the supermarket. I love working with Gardens by the Bay, where we will have a special Christmas display also focusing on sustainability. And it all came from especially young people in the organization. And that's what's really helping me to believe in the future, because it's the young ones who are pushing us. My daughter is pushing me. Probably you have the same at home. That it's people asking you for accountability. You are in a position of power, show it.
Very good. So now let me rewind back to the business side. So we know that change is inevitable. Doing good is good business. And that government is also putting a lot of help to make sure that we all change, right? So, but this is post-COVID, and there's a lot of anxiety about jobs, anxiety about livelihood. How do we get this as an opportunity, other than, you know, having to incentivize? How do we make everyone realize that this is a great opportunity to change and move closer towards zero, waste by a certain target year? Great ideas from this panel. I'm seeing you as my ideation panel now. So moved out of your company and say, what can we do with each other maybe on the panel?
That's interesting. Well, you know, I can kick it off. So I think, you know, activating ideas everywhere is important, whether internally with your own family or your staff, or externally with partners. And I think, you know, forming coalitions to move forward on things, alliances, whatever term you call it. To me, it may take longer. It may feel that it takes more time to set it up because, well, you know, we all have different ideas. Diversity is a strength, you know, have time to listen and be curious about other people and so on. So it does take effort, but I think that effort should lead to a better outcome. So, you know, I would come back to one of the ideas that you about, which is plastic waste, right? So how do we tackle it? We formed an alliance.
Mission, right?
Indeed, you create a mission around a topic that is of concern, form an alliance and be open to who is in the alliance. So, you know, we created an alliance about 2 years ago, just on ending plastic waste. And the name was kind of just Alliance to End Plastic Waste, right? You could not be confused by its name. And along with a lot of companies in the business of producing plastic, in the business of managing the waste, in the business of even conversion of products and so on, you open up that alliance.
Fantastic.
And, you know, you try and make a move. So I think we can do more of these things.
So open innovation, have great conversations, even if it takes a long time, it's worth it.
Well, reach out to
Sushan?
each other. Kaping called me last week
Yeah.
on my mobile. I was driving.
Hello.
She said, hey, why don't we work together? I'm like, yes. The next day, her team and my team got together, and we now have 3 work streams.
And imagine that they were already talking.
They were actually
Yeah.
talking, and we didn't know.
Exactly. Right.
But the fact is, Shell's an expert in carbon credits and renewable energy, in power. I think if we're all open-minded to work with, government experts, industry experts, financial experts, a lot can be done. But we need to workshop with each other.
Exactly.
Start with the low-hanging fruit, right? Let's not get to utopia straight away. As I said, transition, right? The low-hanging fruit, what's practical, what can be doable? Could it be, helping to do carbon offsets? Could it be getting people to recycle more? Could it be reaching out to more people in society who need help? I mean, I think COVID has brought about or could bring about a massive social bifurcation of the haves and the have-nots, right? The heroes and villains, if you will. And I think for corporates who don't want to be deemed to be the villains who have it all, then to be able to rebalance that bifurcation is important, right? And in the COVID world, how you rebalance that bifurcation by creating more social impact, by helping those who have lost their jobs, who need to be retrained, helping those who need the most help to pull themselves out. I think that in itself would create the social cohesion that we're trying to build.
Very nice. Ambassador Vono, we actually have another question here just for you. Young people might be easier to convince, Ambassador, but I thought it was the older people, not poor, who are not willing to do things differently for the sake of the environment. Do you agree or disagree with the statement?
I agree that we need the younger people to convince the older people, and I even need younger people to convince me because I'm in a way set in my ways. And what I'm doing is asking younger people for ideas, like with Tata Consulting Services. We had a big sort of moment where SMU students actually won.
I was hoping
we asked them,
would mention.
and I'm going to invite them to my house. No. But we want less food waste in Singapore, and we asked the students come up with ideas because maybe you're better than we are, and actually I think they are. So now we're trying that the Tata companies trying to implement and see if their proof of concept works. And it was so energizing, and it helped me to change my ways. So actually, I agree with the question. And I think what we all need to do also here in the panel in positions of power is listen to the younger generation. And I try to have their voices heard wherever I can. And I think that's what we all can do in this panel.
The next panel, all right, Sengthi, we need someone below 40. All right, I think you're below 40.
No, I
Okay,
just
below
crossed
30.
3 months ago.
It's below 40. Yeah?
No.
We don't qualify, I'm afraid we don't.
We don't. Very, very nice. And I'm watching the clock, so I'm going to ask one more question and then, the final round. So we go back to you, Moss. Yeah. So we are seeing a lot of opportunities being rolled out, both job security, tech, and businesses. How do we get different clusters of the businesses to come together? Because you heard just now from Kaping and from, Sushan, a lot of this is cross-sectorial. And this is so important at the country level.
Yeah.
How do you think we could get, we have the industry transformation map, but that tends to be very industry specific. And there's a lot that can be done at the industry level. But how about cross-industry?
Right. So when Kaping was talking to Sushan and it was a nice banter, a hashtag came to mind. It's FOMO, which is fear of missing out. What can I then say? And in fact, with our counterparts from the Netherlands, we have been working on the aquaculture and urban farming agri-tech front. And that's quite interesting because within my MTI portfolio, I'm looking after this particular agri-tech aquaculture piece. And over the last couple of weeks, I have visited, if you haven't been to St. John's Island, you ought to go because there's a marine aquaculture center. And what we have there are interesting startups like Aqualogics, Barramundi, and the likes. And they are cutting edge, they're creating startups, and also actually bigger companies like Barramundi, for example, where they have these circular economy, but circular systems, circular feeding systems.
Yeah.
I don't know what the acronym is. It's RAS, but it's a circular feeding system. And then we had young from the polytechnics working in these kind of companies and trying these out as well.
Nice.
So, and we're getting expertise, of course, from the experts. And it's our size constraints, our resource constraints that compel us to have to try to do this. I mean, who would have thought that we would be, producing fish, right?
Yeah.
And so all you have to go to
And it's delicious. It's the best
Exactly.
fish in Singapore. I serve it.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's very good. Yeah.
Delicious, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very, very good.
Edible fish, not even ornamental fish.
No,
Oh, it's
like
very
tilapia, barramundi.
juicy and very fresh.
Exactly. And these are in controlled environments. And what we want to also do is to help to encourage our, and there are jobs that are going to be created as a result of this. And we can help to spur and raise awareness that these jobs are being created. And when you come into these jobs, you are helping, it's a sustainable job opportunity as well.
Great. And we all love fish.
Good for the brain, I suppose.
Amazing. So I'm going to go one final round. I'm going to start with you, Sushanya. So since you're facing me. So for all of you on this panel, what does success look like in the next 1 to 3 years? Let's speed things up and not think about 3 to 5 years horizon. What does success in ESG look like?
It looks like to me when you don't have to explain it anymore. When everyone knows, okay, I know what you mean, got it, and let's work together. I think to me that's what success looks like.
Thank you very much, Sushan. Ambassador?
For me, success is that, for example, somebody who is an horticulturist at Gardens by the Bay and everybody says, wow, you have the best job, instead of the jobs that make the most money, so that you are more sustainable and as a whole. And I hope that society is changing a little bit in how they look at success.
I like that, yeah. Not so much the usual 5 C's or 4 C's, yeah.
No.
But
Yes,
the S,
indeed.
yeah, the S will come.
Yes.
All right. You have the last word, Kaping.
Well, I think in 3 years, we shouldn't be talking about trade-offs, meaning, well, hang on, but don't we have to grow the economy? Why is this ESG important, right? It can coexist. And I think it has to be something that every generation of people, and not just the younger ones versus the older ones, are having that discussion around. Every generation of people ought to say, there are no trade-offs. We can manage the trade-offs, and because it can coexist.
Very nice, Kaping. And Moss Tan, what does success look like? 3 years, 1 year from now, 3 years from now?
Yeah, well, I don't know. And I think that's okay. And you said, Prof, that you're giving the last word.
Yes.
So I'll have the last word, but I won't have the last idea.
Yes.
And I think that's really important because we don't know, you never thought that you have fish you produce in Singapore. And if we confine ourselves to a certain paradigm, which COVID has then shown us that, hey, that paradigm is being destroyed, in fact, in a matter of months. I think that's why, I ought not to have the last word.
Yes.
And we ought to have many, many ideas following this last word.
Very nice.
Yes.
So Minister has kind of opened to all of you out there, all the audience, to come and be part of this conversation. But it should not be a conversation. I think what we started this morning is what I call a AAA approach. We have 3 T's, very good T's, but the AAA approach is everyone on this panel and the subsequent panels to come would have the same aspiration. An aspiration that we don't have to keep talking about it anymore. We don't have to talk about trade-offs, and it's intergenerational, that we absorb and embrace the principles of doing business well, doing it right. So the aspiration and the ambition is very strong. I think we need alignment. And I've been seeing the alignment here, seated here, cross-sector, intergovernment, and then with academia and with business and with NGOs. So the alignment of common interests, I think that's so critical. But guess what? This is not a talk show. We need action. That's my final A. I think we need action. We need every one of us after this conversation to say ACTS got us started. That's another A. Right? ACTS got us started. Let's walk the talk. Let's grab every opportunity to be part of an open conversation and alliance just like this morning. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm sure you will be delighted that we will be looking at all the alphabets, the E, the S, and the G, and looking at cases and looking at the investor's perspective. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. And a wonderful clap and hand of applause to my great panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.